The Jaguar E-Type is unquestionably one of the most iconic sports cars of all time. But what happens if you throw out the XK straight 6, drop in an almighty V12 engine, tweak the styling a bit and gear it more towards the American market? Well, you end up with the Series 3 E-Type. Question is it an evolution of an iconic formula, or is it a very good recipe spoiled? Well, Phil and I took the chance to drive this gorgeous yellow Series 3 Roadster and find out. But first, our friends at Lancaster Insurance are running monthly giveaways. You can win all sorts, from experience days to tools, restaurant vouchers and tech. So click the link below at the end of the video to enter their latest competition.
So Joe, the Series 3, the Unloved, one of the 3 series of E-Types.
Yes, the black sheep of the absolute icon.
And yet, I think it's coming into its own.
There is an argument for that, isn't there? Because these cars are obviously the least loved stylistically and so on, they're by far and away the most affordable. Jaguar were looking at volume sales of this car, weren't they? Because obviously America had loved the XKE, as they call it over there, and they wanted to create an E-Type to appeal specifically to that market. They turned it into more of a Grand Tourer.
Exactly.
So the short wheelbase coupe was dropped, you only got the longer wheelbase 2+2. It was 3/4 of an inch wider to make it more spacious, and you can tell it is. You know, this is a more roomy car than a Series 1, I'm not elbowing you. And this was the first E-Type offered where you could have an automatic Roadster, which is arguably peak Californian spec, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Power steering was standard, which means it's a nice easy car to drive through town and cruise along like this. You can thread it through turns easily. And on the whole, it was definitely sports car turned GT.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that's what it was. It was trying to sort of respond to those North American needs. Revised front suspension geometry and uprated brakes, bigger brake servo. So it was all just designed to handle that bigger, more powerful, more torquey engine.
Yeah, we should talk about the engine because, of course, if you're going to design an E-Type for America, I mean, V8 is the obvious, but a V8 E-Type...
Well, they did toy with the V8, didn't they? But I think they were seduced by the V12 and Successor at Le Mans that people like Ferrari had. So
exactly, there is a certain exotic factor to that. So, to go along with the 6-cylinder, Jaguar doubled down to create a V12, 5.3 litres of capacity, around 270 horsepower, which is way more than any of the 6-cylinder E-Types were producing.
Yeah, it's worth saying the US cars with their Stromberg carburetors were actually lower power than the European ones.
Yeah, of course, and that's the case for many 60s and 70s cars, throttled by America's emissions regulations. But in UK, guys, 270 horsepower is not to be sniffed at. That is strong.
Prototype also had quad cam, double overhead camshaft for each tank, but they made it single cam so that it fitted better under the bonnet. Engineer Walter Hassan, who worked on the V12 engine, set out 4 main parameters. He wanted to develop an engine with a similar or better power to the best race trim XK, and that was around 330 horsepower, so he didn't quite hit that one. He wanted to achieve a minimum weight increase over the XK straight 6 engine. Kind of missed the boat on that one as well. It's about 80 pounds heavier than the XK
the whole
engine.
car is just over 120 odd kilos heavier.
Keep the costs low, well, we managed to do that pretty much, and to avoid having to make too many radical body changes. By the time it is productionised and put into the Series 3, they didn't have to make any radical changes over that 2+2 long wheelbase. They kind of got away with that one.
But for me, the problem is, by this point, the E-Type is already in its kind of fat midlife crisis phase. It's wider, it's longer, it's got those open headlights, not the enclosed ones of a Series 1, that bigger mouth, and it's still a pretty car in its own right, but for me, it's just a little bit more awkward.
I just think the character of it is so radically different from the E-Type Series 1 and 2 that it might not have been called the E-Type.
It is fast though, being no doubt it's fast. I mean, 0 to 60, 7 seconds in the early 70s, that is quick. And make no mistake, for touring, it's a lovely engine. It's silky smooth, it's torquey, you don't have to rev it, which is slightly at odds with the fact that this particular car's got a manual gearbox. I personally wouldn't have done that, but again, the vast majority were autos for that key American market, of course. And it does feel heavy on the road, I would say. Certainly heavier than a Series 1. It feels a bit more leaden. I mean, the light steering is lovely and you can still fling it into a corner like a Series 1, but it doesn't quite give you that confidence of chuckableness. GT, like you said, the revised suspension geometry and so on, it's smooth. This is a kind of rutted English country road here. Cruise along California highway or just on the roads of West Sussex like we are today.
Exactly.
So it is a great GT car.
So are you sold on the Series 3?
No. Because I like the Series 1 E-Type. I think that makes sense. It's a good sports car. It's a great sports car. But the problem is, because you're starting out with a car that was designed to be a sports car, you've had to make all these compromises to other areas to make it into a GT. I mean, we've said, yes, it's supposed to be a Grand Touring car, but the boot is still tiny. With the best one in the world, you're not gifted with the longest legs in the world, and you've still got your knees nearly up around your ears.
Yeah.
I'm properly bunched up in here. I certainly wouldn't want to do a long drive in this driving position. And the way it feels on the road, it feels heavy and a little bit ponderous. There's the good bones here because, let's be clear, that V12 is glorious.
Yeah.
Silky smooth, powerful. It's a great engine, but it almost feels like they've shoehorned this massive touring-oriented power plant into a car that shouldn't have it.
I think the thing is, despite all the engineering changes they made to accommodate the V12, the chassis is not quite ready for something of that size.
It almost feels like a hot rod, you know, when you try and shove a big V8 into an old Ford Popular or something?
Yeah.
I see where they were going with it, and I quite like the quad exhaust pipes, and I love the V12 engine itself, and I like the extra space. I see where they were going, and I can appreciate it, but they should have started with a car meant to have a V12 from the ground up.
Maybe I'm being a bit unfair. The Series 3 E-Type is still a brilliant car. It's gorgeous, it's fast and it's comfortable. But for me it's too compromised. It's too leaden and heavy to be a good sports car, but it's too cramped and tight inside to be a properly good GT. The E-Type was at its best in Series 1, guys, as Jaguar intended, a sports car. And if you want a V12 Jaguar GT, well, I'm never going to say no to the car that followed it, the glorious XJS. So let us know in the comments below, which would you choose, a Series 3 E-Type or a V12 XJS? I get the feeling this could be a close one. This video is proudly sponsored by Lancaster Insurance. Give them a call on 01480 400 889 for an insurance quote on your classic car. And don't forget to click the link below to enter their latest competition.